You're watching The Marketplace. Time to check the latest tech headlines. Joining me for Let's Talk Tech is lead for Eyes of Africa, Henry Kobler. Good afternoon to you, Henry. So I want to start with this story about Ghana and the Republic of Benin announcing plans to implement free roaming between the two countries beginning the 1st of July. This is expected to lower roaming costs for customers in Benin and Ghana. Henry, how significant is this and how beneficial would it be for both countries?
Good afternoon, Daryl. So this is a good milestone, I think, being able to achieve for both countries. This is what we've been actually looking up to in terms of regulations and in terms of policies to basically make sure that the citizenry is sort of benefiting from certain policies that could help us. I mean, relative when we're coming into the ECOWAS framework, I think that some of these practices with regards to telecommunication, money transfers, and all of that is very important that we basically have some of these level agreements coming in place. And I think that it's a good milestone. I'm looking at being able to impact people that basically run through these countries. I mean, there's no reason why you have a neighbor and then the roaming services cost is really off the roof. And so if we're having such a milestone, I think that it makes sense enough. I'm looking forward to it being able to transcend with other countries, especially going through to Nigeria, because there's a lot of connection from Ghana to Nigeria as well.
Great. Next headline, Canal Plus, formally offering $2.9 billion to acquire MultiChoice. They are the owners of DSTV and GoTV. I want to first start off with how MultiChoice is faring on the market and how strategic this acquisition would be for Canal Plus.
It's dicey. I mean, with cable TV coming in place, I think that based on my observations, I'm thinking that football is still running more of cable TV's viewership, and so cable relatively is looking at still tapping into that sense, and also being able to provide more affordable cable TV for viewers as well. And for me, I think that there's still quite a lot of competition that's coming into play, but there's still some level of room to play around in the market.
I mean, there are those who believe that cable TV is nearing its death. And so we've heard Canal Plus also talk about how this could potentially fend off competition from Netflix. How feasible is that?
It depends. I mean, generally, I'm thinking that there's a lot of R&D that's sort of gone into this acquisition that they're making the offer for currently. I mean, to really be looking at making that amount in place. I think that they've done some level of research work, and I'm thinking that cable TV is already not just doing cable TV now, because now I've seen MultiChoice's mobile application being very vibrant and being able to roam in quite a number of people. And so I'm looking at some level of innovation coming in from there, where people could still watch some very good viewerships in terms of channels on mobile as well, because it's when you're taking Netflix, it's relatively just looking at movies, but I'm thinking that it's not just about cabling, but it's also about the innovations that they could put in place in terms of their mobile application and how it could still give a widespread of viewerships directly on phones and tablets as well.
All right, let's turn to the fintech space. ZPay has raised $40 million equity for expansion. What do we know about this story?
So I think that, first of all, congratulate Andrew for a very good work done. I mean, they've been very vibrant within the fintech space, being able to cut across major African countries as well, and being on the fast track in terms of instant settlement of remittances on mobile wallets within Africa and even in the Caribbean. I mean, they've done quite a good work in that regard. If you're looking at how much they've been able to push in, I mean, last year they were able to do almost about 10 million in terms of remittance settlement transactions, which is actually worth almost about 3 billion in value. And that's a huge hallmark for a country, for a business that's still growing. And what I basically know of this transaction particularly is that it's more of Pan-African investment firms coming together to basically be able to raise $14 million for the business in question. And again, it's for me, it's more of a excitement because it's now African countries being able to invest into the companies. I mean, Africa 50, Oyoko, Injaro, Vedant Capital. I mean, all of them coming together to raise 14 million for ZPay. I think it's a good one for them. I'm looking at how they could cut across more African countries and make seamless payment systems and also remittance systems across the African continent easier.
Yeah, and we know that ZPay faced a setback of a sort when it was suspended for certain breaches. Was it the latter part of last year? What would you have to say about how they have recovered from that?
I don't think that it really did affect them too much. Generally, these are some of the issues that's going to come up, especially when such a company is sort of dealing directly with the regulators, boots for boots. And so, generally, you would have some of these suspensions and all of those things come into play. The regulator is really strict on foreign exchange, and so generally, when you're dealing with remittances, there are always going to be some strict guidelines that you sort of need to follow. I think it becomes a learning path for them rather than being on the low with it. And I think that they basically will learn their lessons and be able to put in a lot more checks in place to be able to make sure that the remittances across African wallets gets to be way better. I think that it's giving them a template to deal with because again they are now looking at more African countries, and so it becomes much easier for them to deal with their own regulators here before they actually get out there.
Henry Kobler, smart analysis from you, lead for Eyes of Africa. Thank you so much for speaking with us on the marketplace.